welcome back to my channel. My name is Patricia Meredith, and as an author of historical mystery, I thought it would be fitting that today on Historical Mystery Day, I would recommend some of my favorite reads that are historical mysteries. Well, it turns out as I was making my list, I realized that many of these books also might qualify for Victober. Now, first, a few definitions. First off, what's Victober? Victober is something across BookTube that started a couple years ago where booktubers love to dig into Victorian literature for the month of October. This probably has something to do with the fact that Edgar Allan Poe, that famous horror author, and of course October is spooky month, right? So you're looking for spooky reads. He's also a Victorian author. So I'm sure it started with that somehow. Since then, what I have found is that some people qualify books for Victober. So books that you can read that will count as Victorian reads for October, that sometimes what they mean is books that are written by Victorian authors, so published during the Victorian time period, but also sometimes they include books that are about the Victorian time period or set in the Victorian time period. So to that end, I'll be sharing some books that would qualify for either one of those, but all of these are historical mystery. So the other term I think we should quickly define is what is a historical mystery. Now, technically, a historical mystery means that it is a mystery set in a time period not the same as the authors. Meaning, Agatha Christie books don't qualify as historical mystery because she was writing about her own time period, the time period in which she was living. She did not write books about mysteries set in a previous time period to hers. So instead, what you're looking for is mysteries set in a period before the time period that the author is writing in. I write historical mystery books because my books are set in 1901 in one series, and the other series is set in 1872. So I am not currently living in either of those eras, so therefore they are considered historical mysteries. They also feature lots of important facts about the history at that time and try to evoke a memory of that era and capture what people were thinking and feeling at that time. And usually some part of the history has to do with the mystery. Now, something I came across recently was that actually historical mystery now includes books set in the 90s, which is so hard to believe. Oh my gosh. How old am I? So here's the thing is I am working on a cozy mystery series that I was going to call just a cozy mystery series, but now they're going to be historical mystery series because they'll be set in the 90s. So there you go, the definition of historical mystery. So keeping that in mind, let's see what books I have picked out for you. Of course, the first book that I have to recommend is A Deed of Dreadful Note. This is my newest historical mystery. It features Anna Katharine Green. Now, she was writing in 1872 New York City. She was not just any old author, though. This woman, Anna Katharine Green, is the mother of detective fiction. She is credited as being one of the first women to write mystery novels. And although she is not the absolute first, she's the first to make it big, and she is behind every great mystery that we know today. All of the tropes, all of the cliches, all of those standard formula things that you think of when you think of mystery, from Agatha Christie, from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, before them was Anna Katharine Green. And in A Deed of Dreadful Note, you will go with Anna Katharine Green as she writes her first novel, The Leavenworth Case, which came out in 1878. Now, I absolutely loved all the research that went into this book, and if you want to know more about Anna Katharine Green, you're in the right place, because I have lots of videos and blogs all about her. The other thing about her is that all of her books would qualify for a Victober read, because they were all written in the Victorian era. Some of her later books cross into later eras, and then of course we have the question of does it count as a Victorian novel when it was written in America? Because in America, of course, we didn't have the Victorian era because we didn't have Queen Victoria. Instead, her time period would be called the crossover between the Reconstruction period, which happened post-Civil War, and the Gilded Age, the beginning of the Gilded Age. So it's up to you if you think that she qualifies, but here's the cool thing. Anna Katharine Green is credited as the first author of a historical mystery. Now, her novel, The Forsaken Inn, was published in 1889, but it is set in 1775 and then moves forward a little ways into 1791. That wasn't her current time period. Therefore, it is considered the first historical mystery. Not only that, The Forsaken Inn is an incredible mystery that really turns things on its head. So if you not only want to read a historical mystery, you also want to read a Victober read, I highly recommend The Forsaken Inn because you'll be crossing off 2 things off of your list with one go. It's an excellent book. It is in the public domain, so therefore it can be found pretty much anywhere for free. So definitely pick up a copy of The Forsaken Inn. Of course, also pick up a copy of A Deed of Dreadful Note, which is available in print, ebook, and audiobook. Also, if you would like to read the book that Anna Katharine Green is writing in my book, The Leavenworth Case, you can pick up a free copy of the ebook by signing up for my newsletter on my website, which is at patricia-meredith.com. And be looking for the audiobook, which should be releasing sometime this month. All right, and then of course I also have to recommend my other series. This is Historical Mystery. It is, again, technically the end of the Victorian era. It is set in 1901. So it is up to you if you want to qualify it as a Victorian read. Technically, she died in January of 1901, so I don't know about that. But it's definitely historical mystery. Also, it is set in America. So again, we have that question of, is it the Victorian Edwardian era or is it the Gilded Age? So whichever way you want to call it, these are historical mysteries set in 1901 Spokane, Washington. So that's the Pacific Northwest. And if you want to learn more about those, again, I have lots of videos here and blogs on my website where I talk about all of the history that went into writing these mysteries. These are also just the first 3 in this series. I am currently working on book 4, but you can definitely dive into these 3. It has a good ending here, and then I'll be seeing where the characters take us in the next batch of books. So be sure to check out Butcher Baker Candlestick Taker, which is the first in the Spokane Clock Tower mysteries. You do need to read these in order, so be sure to pick up this one first. It is available in print, ebook, and audiobook, and the narrator, Rebecca Cook, does an incredible job of breathing life into these characters. So if you want to listen to it like you're listening to a movie with voices and everything, highly recommend picking up the audiobook. My favorite part of my books is in the back, the historical notes, where I talk about all of the history that went into these. And to me, that's what makes a book a historical mystery. If there is a bunch of historical notes in the back that tells you what's true and what's not, then you understand where the author was coming from, how much research goes into writing this type of book. I absolutely loved writing these, and I hope that you will pick up a copy and enjoy reading these with me. All right. I know, enough of my own books. Let's move on. Let me recommend to you some of the other books that have influenced my own writing as a historical mystery author, and therefore I highly recommend them. The first would be Anne Perry. Now, recently you might see that I began her series, which features Charlotte and Thomas Pitt, and I didn't really care for the first book in that series. I might maybe try the rest of the books in that series, but to me it feels like that was her first series and she got better with time. Now, The Face of a Stranger is the first in her other series, which features Inspector Monk. And no, not the same Monk that you're thinking of. A different Monk. These are definitely set in the Victorian era. This series begins in 1856 London, England. So I highly recommend this series if you are looking for something that is historical mystery and also a Victober read. Now, Face of a Stranger is my favorite because it begins with a man who is suffering from amnesia. Now, it's not giving too much away to say that this man turns out to be Inspector Monk. And he was hot on the trail of a murderer, and now he doesn't remember where he was in the case. So he basically has to trace his own steps in order to resolve the case he had probably already solved, and that's why he got hurt. I absolutely loved the premise of this book, and I have been enjoying the other books in the series even after this one. So if you're looking for a good historical mystery and Victober read, highly recommend Anne Perry's Face of a Stranger. Another favorite read of mine would be Elizabeth Peters' series featuring Amelia Peabody. Now, the first one is called Crocodile on the Sandbank, and it is set in 1884 Egypt. Now, the main character is British, so I think these absolutely qualify as Victorian literature. You will find very similar things to later books that Agatha Christie would write that take place in Egypt. These are really fun because of the time period in which they are set. Not only are they historical mysteries and Victober reads, but they are revealing things that they were just then uncovering about the mummies and ancient Egypt. So things that we take for granted today, they were just then learning. I absolutely love Amelia Peabody. She is a strong female set in Victoriana, and she doesn't let anything hold her back. She is wonderfully written because even though she is a strong female, she doesn't counteract the traditions and culture of the time. It's not like she's a modern woman who got thrown into a Victorian novel. That's something that I definitely shy away from. Same with Anne Perry's books. Elizabeth Peters does an excellent job of writing a woman of her time period and showing that she has strengths of her own. I also love the love story that takes place in this one and continues for the rest of the series. So I highly recommend this one. If you fall in love with this one, there's a whole series waiting for you to uncover by Elizabeth Peters featuring Amelia Peabody. So there you go, historical mystery and Victober read. Now, if you know anything about me at all, you know the next book that I'm going to recommend. This is my all-time favorite book ever written, and that is To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis. Now, this book is technically time travel fiction, so you're not going to find it in the mystery section of your bookstore. You're not even going to find it in the historical section of your bookstore. You'll find it in science fiction because it is time travel. That being said, I absolutely love where she goes with her time travel in this one. Now, a lot of it has to do with World War II, but it also has to do with 1888 Oxford. So that's why I consider this a historical mystery that also crosses over with Victober. It is absolutely set in Victorian era, and not only that, if you are a fan of historical mysteries set in World War II, which tends to be, it's either you love Victorian time period or you love World War II. Those tend to be the top ones right now. So if you're looking for a good crossover, this one is the one I definitely recommend reading. Now, technically this is the second book in the series, but you can absolutely pick it up without having read the first one. But if you're looking for an excellent historical mystery and you want to start at the beginning, this other one is not a Victober read, is the only thing. Now, the first one is called Doomsday Book. Now this one is also, it's a little bit sadder because it is set in the time of the plague. And so we go back quite a ways before Victoriana. And again, it is time travel fiction. And so you're bouncing back and forth between modern day Oxford and then jumping back in time. Now, like I said, it's a little bit not as a positive of a read in this one was my experience. This one crosses over with like P.G. Wodehouse type humor. It's very witty, very funny. The main character is wonderfully written, and absolutely you are in his brain the entire time. It's all wonderfully written. So that's why I prefer this one, because it's just a little bit more of a positive read, and it's the era that I absolutely love. So To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis if you're looking for an excellent historical mystery and Victober read. Another book that I would highly recommend that I believe crosses over with historical mystery and Victober would be Dancing and Donuts by Rachel Covasini. And I recently got to do an interview with Rachel, so definitely look for that if you want to learn more about her writing and who she is. I absolutely loved our discussion. Now, Dancing and Donuts is the first book by her that I have read in her Western retellings of old fairy tales. They are wonderful series of books. Dancing and Donuts is the one I chose to start with because it, of course, is about the 12 dancing princesses and is a retelling of that story, which is one of my favorite fairy tales of all time. Now, it is set in 1866, America. So again, does it qualify as Victorian? I don't know, but it is set in the right time period. It is the Victorian time period, but in America, which again would be called the Reconstruction period on our side of the pond. So it is a wonderful story that has to do with a man who has recently finished fighting in the Civil War and about that move west. She includes a lot of history that has to do with that time period and how the West was won and how all of those cowboys and how all of those stories of the Old West came to be. And it all builds straight out of the Civil War. So I really appreciated her attention to detail. Historically, it's very historically accurate. She even has a historically accurate recipe for donuts in the back of the book. So be sure to check out Dancing and Donuts by Rachel Kay. All right. These next 3 recommendations are not Victorian reads. They're not even anywhere near set in Victoriana. And so I can't recommend them for Victober, but I absolutely recommend them as historical mysteries. So the first one is Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. Now, this one is set in 1327 and features a Franciscan monk who solves mysteries. His name is Brother William of Baskerville, and I absolutely love this book. You should also check out the movie, which features Sean Connery. I absolutely loved it, and it's a more condensed version of the story. Of course, it's not going to be the same as the book. The book is excellent, very detailed, wonderfully written, beautiful language. Oh my goodness. If you're looking for a beautiful story and a historical mystery, I highly recommend Name of the Rose. It is one of my favorite historical mysteries, and it's not set in Victoriana, but I still absolutely love it. The themes throughout it are wonderful, and I highly recommend it. This next series also features a monk, and they are the books by Ellis Peters featuring CAD File. Now, CAD File is one of my favorite series of books. I have been working my way through the mysteries on audiobook, and I highly recommend them. But my introduction to CAD File was actually through the TV series starring Derek Jacobi. So if you're looking for a new TV series to just suck you into a different time period and count as historical mystery, that would be CAD File. I highly recommend it. The books, though, are even deeper and even more wonderful than the series. I have been very pleased to find that the books hold up against the TV series. So these are set around 1135. You're dealing with King Stephen and Queen Maud and the fight for control over England at that time. So they are set in England, but they're not set in the Victorian period. So I don't count them for Victober, but they're definitely historical mysteries, and they're very well written. The character work with CAD File in particular, and his story of faith and his journey through the world and then into becoming a monk, the more you uncover about that story, the more I fall in love with CAD File as a person. And I very much appreciate the level of detail and the research that obviously went into writing these books. That it is very, very well done. And I love how CAD File solves mysteries because he is an herbalist. So he's using natural remedies they would have used at that time. And because of his familiarity with that, and because he's been out in the world before he became a monk, he is able to solve mysteries through character and through the herbalist side of things. And it's just very well done. The character work is excellent. And I highly recommend checking out the CAD File series written by Ellis Peters. And last, but certainly not least, I wanted to throw in a children's book read that I think all adults should read at some point. This book is absolutely beautiful, and it was one of my favorites to finally read with my kids as part of our homeschool and to share together, because not only is it a historical mystery, it does take place in 1931, which is another time period that I absolutely love, and it takes place in France. So this book is The Invention of Hugo Cabre by Brian Selznick. Now, look at this beast of a book. How can you call that a children's book? Wow. It is a children's book and an early reader book at that, because much of the book is told with pictures, and they are beautifully, beautifully drawn. Now, don't think just because it is a picture book that it is any less of a historical mystery. This book will pull you in, and what we ended up doing as homeschoolers was diving into the history behind the book, which is all about the early movies. And we end up learning a little bit about the history of those first movies that were designed and created in France. And along with that, you're at the French train station, and you are learning about the great train accident that happened around that time period. And there's just a lot to uncover. The main character is Hugo, and he is a younger boy, which is why it's considered children's literature. But the level of research and story work in this is out of this world, and I would recommend it for anybody of any age. It is highly enjoyable, and because of the pictures, it does make it a little bit easier to read aloud with even younger children and hold their attention. So definitely check out The Invention of Hugo Cabre if you are looking for something that crosses over with maybe middle grade fiction and historical mystery. So there you go, a very quick overview, but 12 plus books that you could read for Historical Mystery Day, or about 9 plus books, I think is what I ended up counting, that would also qualify for Victober. Now, if you want other great Victorian reads recommended to you, I did a video that featured the books my characters recommend in my 1901 series. Now, because it takes place in 1901, all of the characters, the only books that they can read have to be published prior to 1901, which sets all of those books that they are recommending in the Victorian era. So if you want to find a deep dive list into some books that are so influential that they're even influencing my characters in 1901 in solving their mysteries, I highly recommend checking out that video. Now, some of those will be Victober. A lot of those are not historical mystery because they are set in their time period, but they're still wonderful, wonderful mysteries and other classics. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know this was a rather quick run over a whole bunch of book recommendations, but I hope that in that way you can just add to your TBR and have a fantastic reading month as you look forward to reading historical mystery and joining in Victober over the next month as we read some spooky reads and some Victorian reads for the month of October. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for more great reads and recommendations, and to hear more about the history behind the writing of my historical mysteries, and to learn more about all that goes into that. I absolutely love sharing all the detailed work that I go into that can't always be featured in every single aspect in the books. So I hope that you will join me and check out some more of those videos. Hit the subscribe button. Join me for some of my interviews with readers of my books and with fellow booktubers. I have so enjoyed talking to fellow authors and all sorts of different people all across the book world. So thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you soon.